All right, hey guys, I thought I would take this time to do a little chit chat. I'm just going to kind of do my little morning thing. I skipped it yesterday. I didn't do anything yesterday. I just was home doing housework and just stuff like that. I didn't do my face. I didn't do anything. So I definitely need to do it today. And I really only do it for the exfoliating part. To be perfectly honest, I don't have dry skin. My skin doesn't need me to put stuff on it every day. Just what happens is because I'm older, I'm 57, going to be 58 this year. My skin doesn't turn over like it used to. So I just support that a little bit, and I don't do it too much because I don't want to aggressively exfoliate it. I don't want to remove my horny layer, and I don't want to really start, changing the way my body is designed to function. But I do want to have really smooth skin. And I do want to have glowy skin and soft skin and supple skin. So I do mess around with it a little bit, but I don't mess around with it a lot. Okay? I don't use chemical exfoliants because the problem with those, in my professional and personal opinion, is that those are actually dissolving basically, they call it glue. Just so that you can kind of understand, is the cells are together like this, right? And then as the skin naturally sheds, they, separate off, and the stuff kind of flakes away, right? And it's held together with a substance. So the chemical exfoliants dissolve that substance so that the cells break away easier and are able to be exfoliated off, all right? I actually don't want to do that. I want my horny layer. Your horny layer plays a vital role in protecting your skin, and I don't want to eliminate it. But what I do want to get rid of is the stuff that is just ready to go. It's ready to slough off, but it's going to take longer because I'm older. So I am just supporting that process. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I know I've talked about this before, but I know some of these concepts can be a bit confusing because, if you don't understand, what's actually going on, it's very easy to, kind of fall into some ideas that may or may not be true. And this idea that washcloths aren't good for your skin. Well, if you're scrubbing your skin, they're not going to be good for you. But I'm not scrubbing my skin with a washcloth. I'm just using it very, very gently to support that sloughing off of the stuff that is already ready to go. Okay. So yeah, this idea, that somehow chemical exfoliants are better. Well, the idea is that if you scrub your skin with a washcloth, you can put little micro tears in your skin, and that is obviously not good for your skin. Okay, but if you're doing it very, very gently, yeah, not a problem. And the thing with the horny layer too is that those cells aren't alive. Okay, and that's something I just can't stress enough. They're not alive. They're dead cells. So you gotta scrub a bit to get down and to do any kind of damage. Okay, so just a gentle, very gentle, I literally just sweep across my skin with it. So there is nothing harsh going on. It's just very, very gentle. And again, it's only removing the loose stuff. Now, this cloth is one of my favorites. It's like a waffle weave or a honeycomb weave, and it does have two different sides to it, which is kind of nice. So one of them is the tiniest bit more textured than the other one. So they both offer a little bit of texture, but they feel a little bit different. But not by much, not significantly, okay? So I don't know that most people would notice, to be honest, but I personally feel like this side that looks more like the honeycomb has a tiny bit more texture than this other side. That doesn't quite look, you can tell the difference, right? That literally looks like honeycomb. That has a different shape to it. So, but again, they're both textured. They're absolutely both textured. This one feels a little more textured to me. But again, I just go very gently on my face, and I only use warm water on my face. I never use cleansers. I never use toners. I always laugh when I see people pushing cleansers and toners and all that stuff, and I'm like, you don't need them. They're not good for your skin. They're absolutely not good for your skin. And pH balance doesn't mean anything. You're still putting a bunch of stuff on your skin that is radically altering the way your skin naturally functions. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not even a fan of putting water on my skin all that often. But I do it, again, because I do want the benefit of the gentle exfoliating. So that's why I do it. But I'm a believer, if your skin is great and you're on the younger side, just leave it alone for the most part. Leave it alone. Your skin will be better off for it. Again, but a lot of us, you know, we got stuff we need to deal with. I have a serious history of sun damage, and then I had that chemical burn on my face all those years ago. And then to just put the cherry on top, I had very bad frostbite on my face, which I believed caused permanent damage. I actually thought I was going to have surgery on my nose. It was really bad. It was really scary. So I have a lot of stuff I need to, you know, kind of contend with, but my skin is actually doing great. Like, it's doing really well, all things considered. But I did have, you know, that little bit more thickened skin. I mean, I didn't have like the worst skin by any means, but when you've had a lot of excessive sun exposure, you do start to get that thicker outer layer, especially as you get older, because, you know, it's trying to protect you from your stupidness. And I just wanted to kind of thin that down a little bit. Not a lot. Like, again, I didn't want to remove my horny layer. I just wanted to thin it down a little bit. So that's what I did. And again, I don't tell anybody what to do when it comes to skincare. It's just a personal decision of what you want to do. But I've been doing this with my skin for quite a while now, and it's actually doing really, really well. So yeah, it's a balance. It's like anything else. It's a balance, right? It's like doing something for me to get the benefit that I want, but not create any damage to my skin, or at least not any significant damage that is really going to be an issue, because the body can handle a little bit, right? I mean, think about it. People are doing stuff to their skin every day that's terrible for their skin. But, you know, their skin isn't necessarily terrible for it, right? Because our skin is amazing. Our body is amazing. It can handle a lot. But we have limits. We absolutely have limits. I'm working with a girl who was on Accutane, and it has damaged her skin severely. She's a year in, and her skin is still not producing oil. Her skin is still, again, I'm really hoping that it's not permanent damage. I'm hoping that there's, you know, still going to be some improvement, you know, with her skin. It's looking better because now at least she's able to put some jojoba on her skin, whereas prior to that, every single thing she was putting on her skin was bothering her. So I'm hoping that's a sign of improvement. But again, you know, a year seems like a really long time when you're struggling with something. But I explained to her that when I had my chemical burn on my face, it took me a couple of years to start to reverse that. And when I had the severe frostbite on my face, and like I said, I thought I was going to have surgery on my nose, and I didn't, thank goodness. But I thought the damage was permanent, and what was happening was during the day my nose was okay, it looked okay. It is definitely swollen on one side, and it's a little ick, I don't like it. but I also had oxalate damage in my nose. I've talked about this before too, where I literally had oxalates coming out my nose. I had these sharp crystals coming out my nose in addition to other symptoms. Okay, but that was like one of the big ones. So the combination of the frostbite, oxalates, whatever, what a nightmare. But my nose would swell, and it would start swelling like late afternoon, early evening, depending on the time of year. And it would just get hot and swell, and it sucked. And it did this for years. And even though I was treating my skin gently and doing things to my skin, it was when I started using the zinc balm religiously, like using it faithfully, using it consistently, that I started to notice that starting to get better. And now it is significantly better. Now it hardly ever gets red, hardly ever gets hot. It hardly ever swells. Now, if I like got a sunburn or something, yeah, it's gonna definitely, or if I get super, super cold. But for the longest time, like I couldn't even go out into the cold. My nose would itch, tingle, burn, feel weird, make my face feel weird. But it is so much better. I went through this winter and it was just so much better. So yeah, it can take a long time for things to heal. So it's really important that we don't get, too depressed because something doesn't happen in a time frame that we think it should be happening. So I just wanted to mention that. All right. So that was my animal fats, my face balm. Now, I just don't know if I'm going to put sunscreen on today. I really don't know how much I'm going to be out today. It's going to be in the 90s today. It's going to be pretty hot. I've already shut my windows. I don't use air conditioning. I hate air conditioning. So I'm going to stay inside today probably and just like get some houseworks and stuff done. So I don't really think I'm going to be going out that much. So I don't know that I want to put sunscreen on. Do I? I don't know, because I just hate to waste it. It's expensive. I don't like to put it on if I don't need it. So I don't think I'm going to do it. If I go out, I'll throw something on, or I don't know. If I go out, I won't be out long. I'll just put a hat on probably and, whatever. So what I really wanted to chit chat about is I post a lot of stuff. I post a lot of stuff on my community channel, and I make videos about subjects, all right? And what I want to say about that, just to remind you guys, because I hope you know, for those of you that follow my channel, I hope you know that I share information I find interesting, compelling. I'm willing to change my mind about things. I'm willing to look at both sides of a story. I'm willing to look at multiple sides of a story. I am willing to look at things from a lot of different angles. And when I find something interesting and compelling, I like to share it, even if it contradicts or conflicts with a previous held belief that I had. Okay, that is just who I am. I try to be as unbiased as possible. Okay, I don't think there's anybody on this planet that is completely 100% unbiased, but I try to be really unbiased. I try to follow the evidence. I try to follow what makes the most sense. But sometimes things don't make sense according to the human mind because nature has its own way of doing things. So it can be complicated sometimes, but there are certain things that I'll, learn about or hear about, or like a narrative that's out there. And something in me will just be like, no, there's something not lining up. It's like, and then I'll dig and dig and dig and dig, and then I'll find information that is just really interesting. And it just supports this deep feeling that I have that something's not measuring up, something's not making sense. And then I will share that information with you guys, okay? And then there's the issue of a system that we know lies to us all the time, okay? And then them having some information that is actually true, but then they spin that narrative for an agenda, because that's what they do, right? They're opportunistic, okay? So they will outright make up lies, then they will twist the truth, and then they will use the truth to serve their agenda. So that's how it works. So what happens is when you're awake to that and you acknowledge that that's happening, it's really easy for people to think that everything they're saying is a lie, because they've lied before. They lie about things. So therefore we can't trust them at all. And even though I would agree with that, you can't trust them. You can't trust them at all. But not everything they say is a lie. Okay, a lot of times it's a half truth or a partial truth, a little bit of truth, and then a spin. Okay, a spin that serves their agenda. Nobody is ever given the whole truth and nothing but the truth, because nobody knows the whole truth. Okay, humans are not at that point. We probably never will be. Nature is always going to be a million steps ahead of us, okay? Nature's always changing, adapting, shifting. Natural selection is always moving, really, really quickly, a lot quicker than humans, okay? It outpaces us. Humans will never outpace nature. So keep that in mind as you look around what's going on in the world. Humans will never outpace nature, even though it looks like we're destroying nature and we're doing all of these awful things to humans, to animals, to life, to plants, to trees, to the planet. We are. We are. And I don't really mean you and me. Okay, unfortunately, we are slaves to the system. We've all been forced into the system. For those of you that don't understand that, please study history. We've been forced into this system, literally by force, okay? As if you look at history, humans have generally resisted a lot of these types of systems, okay? But it doesn't end up going so well. And now, unfortunately, they've gotten it to the point where humans are completely compliant for the most part. We have learned to embrace our slavery, and we're too comfortable with it. We're too comfortable with our slavery now because we have all of these things of convenience, and we easily overlook the fact that we are all debt slaves, and we are slaves. Okay, again, another video for another time. But what I really wanted to say about this is that nature is at some point going to make everything right again. Throughout history, there's been many resets, many cataclysms, many times that nature has basically wiped the slate and started again. And we don't really know. We don't really know how any of that went down. All we have some evidence that people build stories around, and we don't know the whole truth. Like, I talk a lot about RH factor. I talk about why white people have such terrible melanin, this temporary melanin system, which sucks. It sucks so bad compared to darker skinned people who have what's called permanent melanin, okay? You would think nature, who is as awesome as nature is, and when I say awesome, I mean kind of in the truest sense of the word. I don't mean benign, and I don't mean just always amazing and awesome in the way that we would want it to be. So there's a lot of stuff in nature that is like, whoo, right? Nature always reminding us who's in control, right? Nature has a way that isn't always fun or wonderful, right? Tornadoes, hurricanes, volcano eruptions, poisonous plants, on and on, right? But nature has a way. Nature has a way. And humans are always trying to up it, right? Like one up it, or two up it, or three up it. And it's not going well. We are so out of balance with nature. But where I'm going with this is that, you hear about like civilizations rising and falling, rising and falling, rising and falling. So somehow there's something in the human post whenever. The agricultural revolution was probably one of the last major resets. I think there's been a couple since then, but that was like when we went from like hunter-gatherer to, agricultural, shit show. But prior to that, we have a lot of isolated information that people try to piece together, but nobody really knows. We don't really know, okay? But what we do know is that we are moving towards this concept of the singularity, right? And the real beginning of that was the agricultural revolution. And then, you know, you see the reset about 2,000 years ago, major reset. That was when they created the Jesus story. And then the Industrial Revolution came along, and now we are really moving quickly to get swept up in the cyborg singularity agenda. And for those of you that think the cyborg word is a little, you know, inappropriate to use, they're now using it on the radio, just so you know. People are openly talking about the cyborg revolution now. Big tech people, Silicon Valley people, they're openly talking about it now. Okay, we have arrived. Okay, we've arrived. So people need to like put their panties on and like, you know, ground yourself, because things are interesting right now. But you can also see that the earth appears to be really shaking a bit. Okay, the powers that be like to tell us this is totally normal. But there's a lot of geophysicists, astrophysicists, geophysicists who are also astrophysicists, and they go by the word astrogeophysicist, okay? They are seeing a lot of anomalies. They're seeing a lot of things that have never been recorded before. You're not hearing this from the mainstream pipeline, but a lot of these independent people are saying, wait a minute, this is really unusual. This is more than we've ever seen before. This is whatever. So the system wants us to believe it's normal, but yet there's independent people who are saying, wait a minute, we think nature might be starting to rise up, okay? And this does tie into some prophecies and stuff. And again, I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone what to believe. People can believe whatever they want, but it is interesting. It's interesting that it ties into some of the prophecies, you know, that have been on this planet a long time about humanity reaching a point of no return, and nature was going to have to come in and settle the score. Okay, so we may not be living in that time, but I feel that we are. I was born, basically my first conscious memory is what the fuck am I doing on this planet? And I lived with that my whole childhood. And I've always had these very interesting, deep feelings. And I've always like known certain things, and I've always had certain experiences that nobody else around me ever had. So I was definitely a weird kid, a different kid, even though I was popular and had friends and all of that. It's not like I was the weirdo, like, you know, whatever. That wasn't the case, but my mind was very, very different than everybody around me. And I felt extremely isolated, and I was extremely lonely. My entire life, I was extremely lonely. And I could get into when that shifted, but I'm not gonna like get into my life story right now. But I had this absolutely insane loneliness throughout my entire life. But I was never depressed. And I was never like into self-pity or anything. I just was like, well, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here, and I'm just gonna keep going. But I literally felt like I was on a planet that was spinning out of control, and I didn't know why or how I got here. And I felt like I must have landed on the wrong planet. I somehow felt like something happened to me, and I ended up getting sucked into this reality. Like I felt like I didn't belong here. And then I had an experience later in life that reframed that for me. Let's just put it that way. It reframed it for me. And that was when I started to radically embody and embrace a different perspective. Okay. And I'm not saying that I haven't changed and shifted and grown since that experience. I absolutely have. But I'm just saying there was just a major point in my life that was a serious pivot for me, where I went from feeling like, what the fuck? Why am I here? To, oh my gosh, holy shit. And I still hold that to this very day. I have different ideas now, and things are what's the word I'm looking for? Things are more expansive to me now than they were then. Like, you know, I keep seeing this bigger and bigger picture, this more and more expansive picture. I'll never know all the answers, right? Nobody will. But that's where I'm at, and that's like my story. And I've always questioned and challenged everything. And I've talked about this in videos. I remember being, you know, in high school or whatever, learning about biology, or I don't know, junior high, high school, whatever, learning about like DNA and 2 strands. I remember sitting there going, well, I don't know about you guys, but I got more than 2 strands of DNA. Like, and people would look at me like, you're crazy. I'm like, yeah, what the hell is wrong with you people? I'm like, that's like slave DNA. Like, I was this crazy kid. Like, it was literally like, and of course my teacher's like looking at me like whatever. And then I remember at whatever age I was, I don't remember how old I was, but I don't know if I was reading a book, or I don't know if I got this downloaded. I really don't know. I don't remember how I got this information, but I remember knowing that human DNA was actually unfolding. And I was like, yeah, right? But it was like, I kind of already knew that I already had it. And it was just very, very strange. And then of course, with the Genome Project in the 90s, I was like, yep, they're hunting DNA, like they're hunting DNA, that's what they're doing. And then right at the beginning of COVID, they published in the scientific magazines and in the scientific publications that they were starting to see healthy human DNA, not cancer cells, but that's a whole nother story, because a cancer cell is just like a survival program. But anyway, healthy human cells were actually starting to unfold from 2 to 4 strands of DNA. And they like us to believe that, oh, we're only seeing it now because we have the technology. No. That's not true. They've known this a long time, which is why they've been hunting DNA, and they are so obsessed with DNA. This is why they're so obsessed with CRISPR technology and all of the signals and stuff that they're trying to interfere with all of this stuff. Okay, that's why. NASA has a huge genome laboratory, the military, Silicon Valley, all of these, you know, they're all the same. They're all run by the same system. Okay, they're not separate, contrary to what we've been told. So there is a lot going down, all right? There is a lot going down. And the fact that they're starting to see that this is unfolding, and that there's more and more DNA that is actually being revealed, that somehow it's kind of like been in there, but it's like it's revealing itself. It's very interesting. It is absolutely fascinating, okay? And they're starting to see it more and more in healthy cells. And of course, they're probably going to try and spin it in a very negative way to get people afraid of it. I don't really know what kind of narrative they're going to spin, but I'm going to assume that because some cancer cells have these 4 strands, I'm assuming they might say it's because of the solar radiation, or because of, you know, whatever, that we have to protect ourselves, and they're actually going to do something to us to protect us from this, right? Because it's somehow a bad thing. That's kind of just my guess. It's where I'm going, but maybe it's not true. I don't really know. And a lot of people will fall for it, okay? Because people believe cancer is bad, that cancer is a disease, but cancer isn't a disease. Cancer is a symptom of disease. Cancer is actually the survival mechanism. There is so much evidence to back this. Like, you know, I always used to like say, well, you know, this is what people think. There is so much evidence behind this now that I'm not saying you can't debate the finer points, but it's just so obvious that it's your cells trying to survive this toxic environment, okay? Diseased, malnourished, toxic environment. Toxins and, you know, all sorts of things. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's gruesome. There's a lot of gross stuff going on this planet. But the reality is that there's a lot going on. Nature is really being activated right now, even within our own bodies, okay? Our biology. Things are really starting to shift and change. Okay, now remember, the whole 4 thing, yeah, is true. But we know that the system doesn't like truth, so they are going to try to spin it some way. So keep that in mind. Okay, the bottom line is if you care about you and humanity, never trust the system. Never. Without exception. Okay, without exception, never trust the system. I think I'll leave it at that for today. All right, signing out.